Hello everybody and welcome to another Winged Review. Today I'm going to be going through a few of the Resident Evil games that I played over the past few months. My first one that I ever played was actually Resident Evil 0 quite a few years ago. And because I played it quite a long time ago, I'm not really going to mention it that much, seeing as I can't remember that much about the game itself. I did enjoy it and I know that much, but the rest of it I really just gone. I've not played Resident Evil 5 where Chris decides to store bowling balls in his arms, so I'm not really going to start talking about that one very much either, but from what I've heard about it, particularly with the woman, it's really going to be annoying. So I'll just skip over that one. But for the rest of them, I'm going to be going through them in order, starting with... I never got to play the original Resident Evil on the PlayStation, but from what I've heard of it, it's so badly done, it's hilarious, and I would like to play it just to see how badly good it actually is. People seem to give Resident Evil a bad rap, particularly for things like the plot, but I actually really enjoyed the remake. It was really creepy, it looked really good, the voice acting was actually pretty good, and I loved it from start to finish. Probably the best thing about the game, though, was probably Lisa. She made a good game great. Though she is mainly in it just for the backstory, she really creeped me out. She's probably on my top 5 creepiest creatures of all time. And having her pop up every now and again and coming after you really freaked me out. When you first start the game and you hear her behind a set of doors, you've never met her before, you don't know what it is, you just hear her, and it's an instant freak out. So she was brilliant. The puzzles in the game were also really good. It wasn't just a case of take this, use it here. You actually have to think about things and use some logic, which I was expecting in the game, and it really did deliver. Only bad thing I really didn't like about the game was that stupid door animation between every single room. It's there, yes, to provide a loading screen, but it was so unnecessary. It probably actually would have been better just to have loading written in the bottom corner. Someone said that it was partly there to build the suspense, but I just thought it broke the immersion. Maybe that's just me, but it really wound me up. Particularly when someone's on one side of the building and they say that they need an antidote from way over the other side of the building, and you've got about 12 doors to go through. It's just annoying. That really, though, is probably the only bad thing about the game. The rest of it is just genius. It's very creepy. Granted, once you've run through the same corridor 5 times, it does lose a little bit of its creepiness, but it's varied enough to keep the creepiness and the suspense there. Really enjoyed the game, highly recommend it, and use the shotgun, it kicks ass. Having been really impressed with the first one, I started the second one, and when I saw how shoddy it was, I just thought, this is gonna suck. And I turned it off after about 10-15 minutes, but I didn't want the fact that it just looked bad to get in the way of enjoying what could be a really good game. So I thought about it, and I just thought, maybe I'm looking at it in the wrong way. Rather than expecting a survival horror game, I should be looking at it as maybe as more of an exploratory puzzle-solving game with a few zombies in it. I started again, and I did really enjoy the game. I got through it. Certainly wasn't as good as the first one, though. Graphics aside, it didn't get the reboot that the first one got, so it's not going to have the same look, atmosphere that the first one had. And other than that, though, it still wouldn't have compared even if it did have the remake. The puzzles in it weren't as good. The first one had some really good, clever puzzles to solve. This one just seemed to have more find something in place A, use it in place B, presto. So that was a big disappointment. Sherry, I really wanted her to die. Yes, she's a little girl, but that still doesn't stop her from being annoying. And I was actually a little bit disappointed when she didn't die in the end. The ending itself just seemed to come out of nowhere. I don't remember fighting any particular difficult boss. I was just coming through, and I didn't actually think it was the ending. I only realised it was the ending when the credits rolled. It didn't finish things off. It seemed to be half of a game. I played the game with Claire, and she's looking for her brother Chris. And during the actual endings, the other bloke says, it's finally over. And I just thought, no, it's not. She hasn't even found her brother yet. It's only just the start of it. And then Claire actually did say, no, it's not. It's only just the beginning. And I thought, hey, right, that's it. Next level, kept going. And then the credits rolled. Where was the big final boss fight? It was just a big disappointment for the end of the game. The game's not as good as the first one in any way, but it was enjoyable. I got through it. It was okay. Definitely better than the second one. Definitely not as good as the first. It does slot nicely in the middle. Nemesis coming after you throughout the game, it starts off good, and trying to run away from him to get to the next area before he gets to you is good edge-and-seat stuff at first. By the end of the game, he is just someone to run away from, and although Lisa in the first one, when she appeared, she was a really creepy enemy that came after you, Nemesis, you just find yourself running away from him, and he's not that creepy or anything, and he does eventually get just plain annoying. There are a few times when you have to fight him, but most of the time you just end up running away from him. Two things though that this game did really well. First one was the sense that you are well and truly alone. The first one takes place in a mansion, and other than the few areas around it that you visit, there's a massive forest outside, and for all you knew, there could be a mass arms platoon in there waiting to barge in. In the second one, it takes place in a police station, and for all you knew, just outside there could be another army squad waiting to run in and help you out. In this, where it takes place throughout the entire city, all you see are Carlos and a few of his friends, so you do get to realise that you are alone and are well and truly screwed. The attention to detail throughout the town is pretty good. You get a lot of debris lying around, and you do really get to see the full effects of the T-virus and what it has actually done to the town. Carlos in this is actually not a bad support character, definitely better than Sherry, but he wasn't anything special though. You do get to play as him for a little bit, but he was nothing great. The other thing though that I did really like about the game was the live action choice system. You'll get a cutscene and you'll have two options come up on the screen, and you have to select which one you want the character to do. There was one where I was on a train which started to go out of control, and I had two options. One was to pull the emergency brake, the other one was to jump out of the window. I decided to pull the emergency brake, and the train crashed through a wall and took me to my next destination. I don't know if jumping out of the window will still get me to the same place, there'll just be a different cutscene, or if it does end up going off in a completely different way. The game does actually apparently have two endings, depending on the options that you pick throughout the game, but it may just be the very last one with the end fight against Nemesis. You get the choice of either finishing him off or escaping. I chose to finish him off. I don't know whether escaping has a different ending, or if it does actually, depending on the choices you make throughout the game, affect the end. The end fight with Nemesis was actually really, really good. He was quite difficult, and he was a good final boss. Other things though, the puzzles in this were pretty good, definitely better than the second one, and overall, it was a good game, definitely better than the second. I really did like this one. Now, this was awesome. So much better than 2 and 3, but probably not quite as good as the first one. It does have a bit of a graphical upgrading, and I think it was first released for the Dreamcast. It also has some really good puzzles in it as well, and it is definitely a big step back towards the horror section of the survival horror genre. The game was really, really creepy, and it was great. You have a support character in Steve, and I really liked Steve. He was a brilliant character, great personality, really wanted a bit of Claire. And seeing as you play as Claire for the first part of the game, I was Claire in the second one, so for me it did follow on quite well. It's quite ambiguous what actually happens to Steve by the end. He gets infected by one of the viruses, and Wesker says that because he survived it and he managed to keep his own personality, he was taken away to be experimented on. But that's all you get told, so I'm kind of hoping that he does appear later on in another game. Wesker in this is also really good. He makes quite a few appearances, and there's a great scene between him and Alexia towards the end. Brilliant battle between them, very well animated, and the epicness is just great. Alfred and Alexia are two characters from the series I've never really known that much about, so being able to play this game and see more about what they are like, really good. Alfred was a complete wacko, but that's partly what made him quite a good character, whereas Alexia was a complete bitch. Even the final boss she was in her first form, I struggled to beat her quite a few times. Did manage to get her eventually, and I did yell a few profanities at her, like, yeah, have it, or something like that, when I did finally manage to beat her. But the game, when you finally get to the end boss, it seemed to just keep going on and on and on. There were probably 3 or 4 times in the game where I actually thought it was going to end. The first one was you have Claire and Steve, and they're trying to escape from somewhere, and you have this big fight against this creature thing, and then there's a scene where they're escaping and Chris comes in looking for Claire. I thought that would be the end of the game and the setup for Resident Evil 5, but you end up becoming Chris and the game carries on, and it goes on for quite a while from there. I didn't mind that it carried on because the game was great and it could have gone on a lot longer. I absolutely loved the game, highly recommend it, and it was awesome. I was a bit dubious about starting this game because a lot of people seem to say that the original games were really bad but this one was really good. Seeing as I liked the original games, would I like this one? As it turns out, yes I would, but mainly because they took out those bloody door animations. They've also changed it from fixed camera to third person, but the fixed camera in the other games never really bothered me all that much. The game is a lot more action-based than the others, so having it as a third-person view really does help that part out. They've also changed the inventory system to the attached case system, which actually works really, really well and is definitely better than the original way of doing it, although the original way never really bothered me that much either. The support character Ashley, I quite liked her. She was alright. She wasn't as good as Steve, but she was much better than that other person. But she wasn't really in it all that much. She did tend to get kidnapped a lot, or she was just hiding somewhere. But that's probably why she was actually not a bad character, because she didn't overstay her welcome. She was a good character, and yeah, I liked her. The puzzles in it were pretty good. Probably not the best puzzles in the series so far, but there were a few challenging moments. The gore level's probably been ranked up a bit in this, particularly with some of the deaths that Leon can go through. The weapons you can get, I still seem to stick with the shotgun for most of the time. It's worked for every other game. It works quite well in this. Seeing as you can upgrade the weapons, which is another thing I really liked about the game, all I was upgrading was the handgun and the shotgun, so I was pretty much able to upgrade everything as soon as I could upgrade it. I had to get the Killer 7 gun. That was a really nice touch, and I did upgrade that as well, seeing as the handgun and the shotgun were upgraded by about 3/4 of the way through the game. I really did like the game, and I can see why people do say it is probably the best one of the series, and yes it is, but only because it's not good because of itself, it's good because all the annoying things from the previous games they have either changed or taken out completely, like the door animations and the inventory system. So, if they could remake the first one and even Code Veronica in the same style that they have remade the fourth one, both of those would probably be better than number 4. Biggest disappointment from the game though is that it wasn't creepy in the slightest. There were a number of opportunities where you're going through some sort of either a sewer or some abandoned place, and it could have been really, really creepy, but they just breezed over the area without really much happening, so that was a big disappointment. But even so, it was a really good game, very enjoyable, bit of a challenge, it was great. These are heavily cut down versions of the original games put into rail shooters. Umbrella Chronicles goes through 0, 1 and 3, whereas Darkside Chronicles goes through 2 and Code Veronica. Because they are cut down versions, a lot of the games are missed out. One of the things I liked about the original games is the puzzle aspect, but as these are rail shooters, really all you do is point at what you want really dead and keep clicking. Of the two, Code Veronica would probably have been my favourite, but the camera angle really let it down. It was done as though you are actually looking out the eyes of the character, which seems like a good idea, but anytime the character just decides to have a look around, that means the camera's going all over the place, and whether or not you hit what you are aiming at can sometimes be up to random luck as to whether or not the camera just suddenly decides to randomly move. The original games are probably better than these two, but these two do offer more insight into some of the background information. There's a section in Umbrella Chronicles where you play as Wesker and you find out what happened to him during the events of the original games. That was quite interesting, and it was nice to sort of wrap things up with the whole plot. Either way, I do prefer the original games to these two, purely because each game is just, there's more to each of the games rather than just clicking at stuff. As an overall series, I really did like the Resident Evil games, and I don't understand why they get such a bad rap. It may have been because of the original games that it was bad a reputation, and these remakes may have done something about that, I'm not entirely sure. But I really enjoyed the games, and you never know, you might as well. Give them a go, they are really good.